4-H reading or 4-H Reading Connections program. So I am Jackie Steffen, and I am with University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and my role is as an early childhood specialist, or educator, I should say. And so I focus in the areas up in Northeast Nebraska. So I have a series of counties. My office is in Hartington. But as you'll soon discover, the Nebraska 4-H Reading Connections program has two components. It has a component that is early childhood related, and then it also has a program that is 4-H school age related. And so Jennifer Hansen is joining me today as well. So I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Yes, thanks, Jackie. I am Jennifer Hansen. I'm an extension educator focusing on the 4-H youth development side. So the little older youth up to about 18. And my county of residence is Thurston County, but then I also help with the program in Burt County. So I'm kind of in this northeast corner of Nebraska and have been part of this team since we started way back when. So with that, Jackie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sounds good. Well, I did just want to point out that our mission for Nebraska Extension is really straightforward. So you can see it on the screen. So with Nebraska Extension, we engage with Nebraskans wherever they are, connecting them with resources, with research, with innovation from the University of Nebraska. And so that's what we're here to do today. We're reaching and engaging all of you on a virtual platform, and we have some really amazing resources to share with you. And the thing that's really unique about Nebraska Extension is we're uniquely local. And so we're the only organization that can bring that research and the resources from the University of Nebraska to all 93 counties across the state, because we're 360 experts strong. We focus in 8 different priority areas. So myself being early childhood, Jennifer being 4-H. You've probably heard maybe of beef systems, cropping and water, food and nutrition. And so with all of us across the state, we're able to connect with 1.9 million Nebraskans. And so we're excited to be able to spend our time today connecting with all of you. So with that being said, thank you from all of the different faces that you see on this screen. We are a huge team and we work so well together. The 2 maps that you see show all of the different 4-H educators across the state. And then you're also able to see the early childhood educators as well. And so we want to thank you for your partnerships if we partnered in the past. So we look forward to continuing those partnerships. And then also those of you who maybe are unfamiliar with the 4-H Reading Connections program, we're excited to make some new partnerships as well. So we appreciate all of you and we're here to serve you. So with that being said, what is the Nebraska 4-H Reading Connections program? What this is it is a collaboration between the Collaborative Summer Library Program and Nebraska Extension. It started back in 2014. We had a little pilot group up in Northeast Nebraska. And for those of you who are familiar with the Collaborative Summer Library Program, each year they have a theme, and that theme is utilized statewide from library to library. And so libraries are implementing that theme, have programming for all ages, for youth, teens, and adults. And so what we did is we decided to partner with the library program and think, hey, how can we work together to both leverage our best assets? So in the summers, we know that many youth are in summer programs. They are meeting at the hubs, meeting at libraries. How can we work together and share our resources? So what we've decided to do is to create lessons and resources that tie directly to each year's theme. And so, as I mentioned, it started back in 2014 with just a small pilot, and it quickly spread kind of like wildfire across libraries, across the state of Nebraska, and then beyond our borders as well. And so here's just a snapshot of a few different pictures. So you can see that there's 2 different kind of sets of pictures on the screen. As I mentioned, there's an early childhood component and there's a 4-H component. So the top row of pictures shows some of the implementation that has taken place in the past years for school-age children, grades K to 6th grade. So this takes place in summer school settings. This takes place in camps, after school programs and library settings, in town halls or auditoriums. And what we're able to do is take our 4 lessons that are created and make that connection with literacy and books, and also to spark an interest in 4-H as well. So it's very hands-on and engaging. One of my favorite pictures is over here on the right-hand side. This was in a library and we were learning about technologies, and it's a laparoscopic surgery activity. And so we had some books that tied along with that, and there were different challenges inside of boxes. And so one box might have had a Tootsie Roll in it, and we had iPads that the children were able to look through and pretend that they were laparoscopic surgeons and try to use their large toothpicks to try to take the wrapper off of the Tootsie Roll. So that's just an idea to let you know it's really engaging, it's really active, and really hands-on. Then the bottom row of pictures, these are pictures from the past couple of years, because we realized that there was a large group of youth that we were missing, youth that maybe weren't in camp settings, weren't in an after school or summer program, weren't able to make it to the library for programming for some reason. And so we created a second set of resources that primarily target early childhood professionals, parents, grandparents, anyone who loves to read and interact with young children birth to age 5. And so these are some examples of some pictures that were taken in a camp setting with this first picture here, and then in a home child care setting as well. And we'll get into those details here in a little bit, but it's just important to know that the 4-H STEM Reading Connection program is kind of an umbrella, but there's 2 segments within that umbrella. And so with that being said, let's learn about the 4-H section of it.
Okay. So the 4-H side of it, basically, as Jackie outlaid very easily for us, we match our 4-H curriculum with the collaborative summer library program thing. We want to spark that interest in reading, but we also want to spark an interest in 4-H, because we found out a lot of these youth have not been exposed to 4-H until they are part of this program. We also wanted to enhance our partnerships with our local partners, those of you at the libraries or at the schools or after school or wherever this is being rolled out, but to strengthen and enhance that partnership. There are 4 customizable lessons, and I cannot stress enough, they are customizable. Make them work for you. I already know there's things in our lessons that I'm going to do this way here and this way a little different over here because of the audience I'm going to have. So make it work for your location. There's always a physical fitness activity, because we know youth today are a lot more sedentary than we want them to be. We also know they need to get the wiggles out. I don't care what time of day it is. Sometimes we all need to get the wiggles out, or maybe they need to stand up and move because it's right after lunch and they're tired. There's also book suggestions, which those help are just merely suggestions. So if your local library doesn't have that book, find something that you think will work. We're all adults and can make that connection there, but we try to give you some guidance for those of you that are like, I don't even know where to start. And then there's 1 to 3 hands-on activities per lesson. So that's kind of how that part of it works. And then our 4 lesson components this time. We wanted to really strengthen the tie to 4-H within our lessons. So each of our lessons this year are going to focus on one of the 4-H's of the 4-H pledge, which that is part of that lesson. But so we have head, heart, hands, and health. So in the head lesson, youth are going to use their head to learn the major parts of a dolphin's body and learn why the function of a tail is important. They're going to use the engineering design process to solve a real world problem. Yes, I forgot to mention, thank you, Jackie, that this year's collaborative library theme is Oceans of Possibility. So that's all of our lessons tie back to oceans or water, some way, shape, or form. In the heart lesson, we're going to talk about how each of us have unique talents and strengths that make us unique, and then the youth are going to learn how an oyster makes a pearl, and how those layers of the pearl can relate to our own strengths, skills, and ability. In the hands lesson, we're going to learn about watersheds. And we're going to learn about the local watershed and how that connects to the ocean, because even though what I might do here in Northeast Nebraska, I might think has no impact on the ocean. Well, it really does. And we talk about that watershed, and there's a really cool interactive map that we found as that part of that lesson. And then we talk about what we can do to protect our natural resources, especially water. In the health lesson, They kind of get to do some mad scientist things with some sink or float type activities, learning about buoyancy and water density. We also are going to learn why salt is needed for health, but how we often get too much salt. And then you'll just kind of learn about that with the youth. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to give a very quick overview of what these lessons kind of look like. So when you first download them, this is the front page. So it says 2022 Oceans of Possibility, kind of gives our overview. It talks about what's in all of these lessons. So it's going to talk about the grade level is K6. You can adapt it up or down if needed, but that's really where we recommend it. The lesson length is approximately 60 minutes if you do it start to finish. Now, sometimes we have less time, sometimes we have more time. This is where it gets to be customizable. The STEM careers connection, relationship to the 4-H's, learning objectives, material list, continue the learning 4-H. That's a new area we added for 2022. Resources, movement idea, book suggestions, and a variety of activities. What I want to call your attention to on the left is those team members that are part of our team. So if you need to contact someone because you have questions, one of these individuals is the person you will contact. And whoever is listed first on the lesson, when we get into that, is the person who either co-wrote or wrote that lesson. So we'll show that on the next slide. That'll be pretty obvious here. So this is the Our Blue Planet lesson. So you can see on the left-hand side, it talks about the grade level, the lesson length, the careers, lesson author. My name is listed first. That's because I wrote the lesson. So when in doubt about a lesson, reach out to that individual. Not that the others can't help you, but I'm not going to be as knowledgeable about someone else's lesson as I am the one that I created. So what you'll see is the talk about the head, heart, hands, and health, the 4-H pledge, learning objectives, supply list, and it's broken out by individual activity. And then on the right-hand side of that is the preparation. It kind of talks about reading the entire lesson through. This is my fall down moment every time. I don't read it all the way through and then I start doing it and I'm like, oh, well, we should have done it this way. So I do recommend that. The next set of slides we'll see here talks about the continued learning. So if you have kids that are in 4-H and they really loved this idea, these are potential projects that they could exhibit at local fairs. It also talks about where we got our resources from. These aren't just things that I created. I don't want to really take credit for them because someone else did the work. I just found them and put them in this packaging for you. The next part talks about the physical activity, like what we're going to do, and it explains how you do that. But on the clear right-hand side, you're going to see the suggested book recommendations for the Our Blue Planet lesson. And there's a variety. For this one, I had found about 4. Not every lesson has that many, but that's how many I have for this one. And then we have vocabulary words that we're going to cover because maybe they don't know what a watershed is and we need to explain it to them. But it's going to give the introduction, re-outline those objectives. It gives you some opening questions to ask. And then it takes you into the first activity. And supplies will be listed again. Kind of the background, if there's background information, and then the steps. And then I skipped some other parts of this, so we didn't look at all the pages. Then we get to the end here, and you can see that there's a second activity, but then there's also the reflect and apply at the very end. So those are kind of those review questions. If you want to see if your kids learned anything, they always like to do this, like smiley face, frowny face, thumbs up, thumbs down, stand up, sit down, however you want to do this. It works really good to do thumbs up, thumbs down, because then they don't have to move. And of course, as always, we love to hear from you through pictures or testimonials using our hashtag that is there below. And with that, I think we talk about the books. Okay, so the suggested books for each of our lessons are Winter's Tale, How a Little Dolphin Learned to Swim Again, and then A Dolphin Tale, A Tale of Two Friendship. That's for the head lesson where we design the dolphin's tail. And then in the heart lesson, there's the oyster's secret and how oysters saved the bay, and a rooster and a pearl, the Aesop fable. And then the hands lesson, or the Blue Planet, is the Pout Pout Fish Clean Up the Ocean, Captain Green in the Plastic Scene, the ocean in your bathtub, and we are water protectors. For the final lesson on health, it's Captain Kidd's crew experimenting with sinking and floating in the science lab. And who sank the boat? And what floats in a moat? I really want to read that one because I like rhymey books. Those always make me happy. So those are just some book suggestions that are there in those lessons. And now I believe we turn it back over to Miss Jackie.
Awesome, Jennifer. Thanks for sharing that. And I just think as you look through that, you might have been overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of content. And Jennifer and her team have done such a great job of tying all these resources together. And like she mentioned, you know your audience, you know the youth that you work with, reading through those and taking the bits and pieces that speak to you and will speak to your audience. So Jennifer, thank you for walking through that. And I'll be showing the team here in just a little bit where these resources are found so that you can look at those and decide which ones would work best for you. But as we transition to the second component of the 4-H STEM Reading Connections program, this is a piece that is available for parents, grandparents, and early childhood educators as well. So it started 3 years ago when we did realize that there was that group of youth that we were missing. And what it consists of is what are called STEM Imagination Guides. And I'll show you one here really quickly, but a STEM Imagination Guide is where it takes a story and it ties in conversation starters, a STEM activity, and then extended learning activities to help bring that book to life. And so last year's theme was Tales of Tales. So it was all about animals and habitats. And it was the first year that we were really able to get this program going in person, because the year prior when we launched it, it was COVID and we weren't able to be in schools and camps and childcare centers and settings. And so this just shows you a little bit of the impact data that we had from last year's guides. So you can see that over 400 of our guides were downloaded in 21 different states, and we were able to reach over 1,800 youth with these guides. The thing that I find really interesting over here is the popularity of the guides. It doesn't surprise me one bit that the farm guide was downloaded the most, especially thinking that we are Nebraska, and the story that goes along with this one for early childhood is the Little Red Barn, which is the favorite to many. But the overall feedback and the successes that we had, we truly appreciate just the feedback that we get from early childhood professionals. And one thing that they mentioned over and over is they like the simplicity of the guides and how so many of the activities weren't things that they had to spend a lot of time prepping or needing to go and get really expensive supplies for. So most of the supplies are supplies that they had on hand. You can see these are just a few pictures. We had some different launches last year where some childcare providers had all of the books and they implemented all of the guides. These guides have been used in libraries at story hour time. There's an infant and toddler piece. So many times when we think of early childhood, we have preschool in our mind, but we don't want to leave out those very young ones. And then just like the 4-H lessons, they're super engaging as well. So there's that nature component, and then bringing in other materials that you might have to help bring stories to life. Just another few pictures of the implementation process from over the years as well. I love this picture down here. This is a group of kiddos from the Crofton area, and they had read the story, Not Norman, an Ordinary Goldfish. And their challenge was to create a pet carrier that was sturdy and strong to carry a stuffed animal. And I love the teamwork of these kiddos together. And the early childhood professional, she shared that they were so proud of their pet carrier that they created that they hung it above the entry. So every day when they came, they were able to see and check on their pet carrier. So it looks different in different settings, but that's the beauty of it. So with that being said, what are the new resources for Oceans of Possibilities? The books that we've chosen to feature this year are a variety of nonfiction books, of new releases, and of classic books as well, such as A House for Hermit, Crab, and the Rainbow Fish. Each year we select 8 books. We go through a big kind of vetting process. We go to the Norfolk Public Library, have them pull all of the ocean water books and pick the 8 that we think are going to speak to our audience the best. The unique thing about this year, or something that we're really proud of, is all of our STEM Imagination Guides are translated also into Spanish. So you're able to download and have the English version and the Spanish version. You can see where the website is to get all of these resources along with the 4-H resources. And we have a QR code that you can scan as well. And this is a kind of a closer look of what the STEM Imagination guides look like. So each guide is going to have conversation starters because we know the importance of having a conversation and interacting with the book. We want to make sure that we're not reading it just from beginning to end without putting our own connections into the story. So some people are able to naturally do that. Some people need some help or some ideas to get started. So those questions are there to kind of facilitate interaction throughout the story. Then the main activity is always on the front of the guide, and that's the STEM connection. And so it's very thorough. It gives you the supplies that you need, step-by-step directions, and then the chance to be able to process that activity with young people as well. When you flip it over to the back side, you're going to see that there's other ways that you can extend the learning of this story. So each one will have a nature component, a creative arts component, and an infant and toddler component as well. On the right-hand side is the background information where you can contact us if you have additional questions. And sometimes these are used for family nights or given to parents. And we have the QR code right there so that they can be scanned and they can go to the website to find the vault of great resources as well. So that's just an overview and kind of a snapshot of what one of the guides looks like. Just to touch base on a couple of my favorite books. So Hey Water is a really cool book because it is an informational or a nonfiction text, and it has received the Robert Siebert Honor kind of award. And what this book does is it goes through and talks about all the different types of water that is around us. So the conversation starter is to first talk about, where do you see water? Maybe a drinking fountain, in the bathtub, from a hose, in a puddle. And once you have that list created, you can go ahead and read through this story and find out what are the other places that we see water and compare the two lists together. Towards the end of this book, there's a couple of pages that are about the different states of water and then the water cycle. So I love to reread books with young children. So a rereading of this book could go, let's look at all the different types of water and then classify them into solids to liquids to gases. Let's go back to that list we created before we read the story. Let's sort that into solids to liquids and gases. The STEM activity that goes along with this one is where they're able to make a water cycle in the bag. Really simple activity with a baggie, a Sharpie marker, and some colored blue water. Tape it up in a window, and then they'll be able to see the water cycle that's also highlighted in the back of the book. So that's just a quick snapshot of what the Hey Water Imagination Guide would look like. Rainbow Fish is a great story about friendship and sharing. It is one of those stories that is a classic. The STEM activity that goes along with this one is called Fast Fish. And so you use the craft foam to create a very small fish that you would cut out. And then you have a container of water, some dish soap, and a Q-tip. And what students are going to discover, or young children, they're going to watch that fish float just on top of the water. But when they put the little bit of dish soap behind the tail of the fish, it's going to break that surface water tension, and that fish is going to fly or swim very quickly across the top of the water. Great hands-on activity to learn about the surface water tension, and also to talk about why fish kind of are slimy and mucousy on the outside and how that helps them travel through the water as well. The infant and toddler piece that goes with this one is we think about some painting that we can do mess-free. And so taking infants and toddlers outside, giving them paint brushes, sponges, and just a bucket with water. And then they're able to learn about the water process as well, and to be able to paint right on the sidewalk with the water, or on bricks, or on a fence. The other one that I wanted to feature was a house for hermit crab. And in this STEM activity, what they'll do is they will learn about how hermit crabs breathe. And so they'll have two containers or two cups. One cup will have a coffee filter over the top. In the other container, they'll have a glass of water and mix either some glitter or some dirt in with it. And they will pour that through the coffee filter. and discover how a fish's or a hermit crab's lungs breathe, how they're able to let the water go through and collect the oxygen. The creative arts activity that goes with this one, if you've ever heard the story, it goes month by month. So every month the hermit crab is meeting a new friend, and the new friend helps to decorate his shell. And so you're able to print out all of the different friends that the hermit crab meets along the way and use a box or a closed basket and add these items to the dramatic play, and they're able to retell their story. I put Velcro on the back of all of my pictures, and so then they can attach the different friends and decorate their shell as they retell the story. So that is just a little overview of what some of the STEM Imagination Guides look like. Like I mentioned earlier, they are really for anyone who loves to read and engage with young children. I know we're getting close on time, so I do want to make sure that we go out and we visit where all of these resources are. Jennifer or it looks like Sandra was able to share the website in the chat box, and I appreciate that. So once you go out to the website, it will look like this. You're going to find the early childhood resources at the top, the 4-H resources at the bottom. So as you scan through, if you're interested in any of the storybook guides, you simply click on download. It will ask you a couple of questions. After you answer those questions, you'll be taken to a file. And even though maybe you only selected the rainbow fish story, you have access to all 8 storybook guides in English and Spanish. So you do not need to go through that process 8 different times. You only need to go through it one time and then save those onto your computer and utilize them whichever way you would like to. As I mentioned, this is year 3. And so we have archived all of our STEM Imagination Guides because we know we don't only want to read about oceans during summer 2022 or animal habitats during 2021. It's great to reread books over and over. And so we have all of our animal habitat resources from last year and then our fairy tale resources from the previous year available. Same concept, click on one and you'll be able to download and save all of those STEM Imagination Guides right to your computer. If I go back to the main part of our website, then as we scroll down, this is where all of our 4-H resources are collected. And so Jennifer talked about the 4 lessons that are tied directly to the 4-H pledge. If you click right here on the 2022 Oceans of Possibilities 4-H resources, same concept. You'll answer a couple of questions. After you have those questions answered, you will have a great PDF resource of all the lessons that are included. And the really nice thing about this resource is we have bookmarks in it. So if you are specifically interested in the Hands Are Blue Planet lesson, you'll be able to scroll. You won't have to scroll through it. You can click the bookmark and it will take you directly to that part. And then there's our contacts down there at the bottom as well. And so with that being said, any questions that Jennifer and I can answer for you?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, or you can put it in the chat.
And I is asking you to register. So if this is something we wanted to use of our summer academic enrichment, which reading is a focus. So we have that with our K through 4th grade. So would I just put Chadron Public Schools? Is that okay if I just put Chadron Public Schools, or do you need that specific schools? Because we could use it probably at either location. I could just do Chadron Public Schools and where it will be used, basically.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Basically, what's going to happen is we collect that data on the front end, and then at the end of the summer, we're going to email whoever's email address got stuck in there, kind of do some follow-up questions.
Okay, so, right. Because it'd be something like, I personally won't be teaching that, but our staff that are working in those programs, this could be another one of the enrichment things they would want to use to go along with other things they were doing. So, all right, thank you.
Yep. And at the end of the summer, when that email comes back to you, because you're the one that downloaded it, then you can forward it off to those that taught it. Because
right. If they taught, and if they didn't, like, they're like, oh, I didn't use that.
Not a big deal.
And I could just say that, like, hey, it was great, but we didn't use it. So our local library here is connected with this too and knows all about this, right? Because they're one of our after school partners. They're one of our big partners. So, okay.
They should know, because we've presented to them. I've sent it out to their statewide directors. Now, whether those directors have then shared it locally, this isn't a bad thing to share with them in case they haven't seen it.
Right.
Things happen. But I also know Jackie was able to get her hands on a copy of the resource manual that they get. And it is like 280 some pages of stuff. And our stuff is different from their stuff. Like, we intentionally made ours different. So.
Right, thank you.
Welcome.
And the other thing I just wanted to share, implementation has looked so different. And that's kind of the beauty of it. I know some settings have actually chosen, specifically with the STEM Imagination guides, to print out the guides, get little like cinch backpacks, put the guide, the book, and a couple of the supplies in there so they could do an activity almost as a take-home activity. And then they would bring those bags back. Others have used these for like family engagement events. So they've invited families in and they've used this as their resource to facilitate those events as well. So, so many different ways to implement, and also thinking about some people have chosen, okay, I'm going to have 1 week and I'm going to focus on the 4-H lessons for these 1 week, or this 1 week. Others might choose to do 1 week for a month. So just a variety of different ways, and know that whether it's the 4-H resources or the early childhood resources, both of them can be scaled up and they can be scaled
down. Those are amazing resources. So well done. Thank you very much for bringing those to us and all the work that you've put into developing them. Very thoughtfully done. Gosh, every part of it. And I love the contact information there too. So if anyone is not sure how to implement the activity, there's somebody right there they can get in touch with, or either of you.
Yeah, so, like we mentioned earlier, we love partnering. So connect with us, and we appreciate you sharing the resources with others as well.
Well, thank you very much for your time today and all your work. And thanks to all of you who joined the Stay Connected webinar. It's always great to see you. May 5th, the first Thursday of May, Jessie Coffey's going to join us, and she's going to talk about creating a calming corner in your after school program. And she's going to give some kits away. So be sure and join that. Stay connected. And then on May 19th, we'll have a session on school community gardens. So we're very excited about both of those. And we will look forward to seeing you again in May. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.